Hello and welcome to the channel. In the last video we did a walk around of this Toro Power Max HD 928 OAE. In this video we're going to take the covers off. We're going to look inside the transmission case, the belt area, and the chute gears. And we'll talk about the differences between this automatic steering and the trigger steering on the 1028. So let's get started. Down in the dirt. Real bad. All right, just one bolt holds this cover on. So you take and remove the bolt, grab the cover, and then just slide it back. So it's a pretty simple system. The gears are made out of I call this stuff Delrin. It's a fiber reinforced poly, and we've been using this type of plastic like on radio controlled cars for years. It doesn't wear out, doesn't break. You don't need to put any grease on it. The gears on these are nice tapered gears, so they run real smoothly. There's no bind or anything. If you look at this, when you go to use it and you push down on the blue lever on your handle, this opens this lock up, and then when you turn it, it just turns around nice and easy. That's really about all there is to it. There's nothing to wear out on it. I like the gear ratio on it. It moves real fast, and there's no binding or anything to it. So that's about all there is. It's a nice solid system. Everything is going to last you a long time. Alright, so now let's take this cover off. The cover is held in place with two screws, one here and one on the same spot on the other side. Just unscrew those and lift the cover off. I'm not going to waste your time and do that on camera. Alright, with the belt cover off, this belt here is for the drive for the transmission. This belt here is for the auger. The transmission belt is a constant pressure. Your control lever actually moves the friction plate, which I'll show you later on. It doesn't release the tension on this. This is a constant pressure. This one loosens completely when you let off on the handle for the impeller. And let me move it here, and you can kind of see how it works. See how this idler pulls ahead and everything tightens up. When everything is adjusted properly, this spring right here is kind of finger loose. In order to look at it, let me zoom it in a little bit more. You can see I can easily move it, wiggle it just a little bit, and this gap right here, right between this black piece and the frame, is about 1/16 of an inch. You should check that about after the first 2 hours of use, and then check that yearly to make sure that that gap is about 1/16 of an inch. If and on your cable there'll be just a little bit of slack in the spring area of your cable up on your handles. I can show you that later too. As soon as you put tension on it, then everything expands a little bit. So that's the biggest thing there. So moving around to the other side of that belt area, like I said, the transmission belt is a constant temperature, constant pressure. So when you pull on this, it actually just moves the drive plate for the friction. So you can see the springs working there, but the belt itself doesn't release. And that's a good system. It's a good, simple system. It works. It just works all the time. When you go to look at the transmission area, you can tip this snowblower up on its nose. And just a couple things to make that I suggest that you do first. Start your engine, turn off the fuel shut off, and let it run out of fuel. Then also make for sure that you have less than a half a tank of fuel in. That way you won't lose any fuel, nothing will run out onto the floor for you. Then one other thing, this new front is kind of angled back a little bit and rounded. So when you tip it up, it doesn't set squarely like your old snowblower does. And one of the things I noticed right away is you want to make for sure that you have the chute moved all the way over to the side. Otherwise the chute will touch the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You don't need to see it on camera. The first time I tipped this over, I thought the thing was going to tip all the way over, but it does land on that edge okay, and I don't think it'll tip over any further, but just for my ease of mind, I put a couple 2x4s under there to kind of hold it up just a little bit. Now it's nice and solid. So you may want to do that too. It also keeps from scratching it so much if you're doing it on cement. Once a year you're supposed to get inside of this transmission case and oil a shaft. And you do that by removing this cover plate here. There's 4 screws that hold it on. There's also a secondary cover plate that opens up the entire transmission. I'm going to take both of these covers off so we can look inside really well and see what's going on in there. So when you first take these covers off, especially after you've owned it for a year or two, you will find some dirt, mud, whatever, oil, little pieces of rubber in the bottom of these plates. First off, these transmission cases, all transmission cases on snowblowers, they're not sealed, they're not watertight, so water does get inside of them, but then it drains right out too. It's really hard. It would be really hard to make a sealed unit, and there's really no real mechanical reason to do that. The rubber, this is a rubber tire, and it's part of the friction disc system, and that's going to get scuffed and wear a little bit over time. If you look at that tire and it has big chunks missing out of it, well, then it needs to be replaced. But as long as it's just scuffed, there's nothing wrong with that tire. This here is what it rides on. When you pull your drive lever, this plate comes up and it firmly grips this tire. That's your clutch. That's what makes it drive. Where this tire is at in relation to this disc, to this pulley, is how fast you go. For example, that's reverse. As you move it, let's see if I can do this backwards. As you move it across, when it gets all the way over here, it's running at full speed ahead. So the closer it is to the center, the slower it goes. That's just mechanically how it works. This one here is a chain and gear drive. This chain is a sealed gear or sealed type chain, so you never have to oil it or anything. You also don't need to put any grease over here in these gears. Over time, and you'll probably start to see it after a couple years when you take this off, you may see a little rust coming on these. This plate down here is going to stay polished, but the rest of it you may start to see a little rust on it. That'll turn into a nice brown patina over the years, and there's nothing wrong with that. And what else do I need to talk about here? Let me zoom in a little bit closer. This shaft right here, that's the one that the friction disc moves back and forth on. Once a year, you should take and put some oil on your finger or oil on a rag and just wipe that shaft. If your machine starts to stick on you, in other words, if the shifter gets sluggish or it gets spots in it where it's hard to move, pull your cover off and make sure that that is greased well. Be careful when you do that. Don't put too much oil on it because you don't want the oil to drip down onto that friction plate, and that'll cause your transmission to slip. But if you just wipe it on with a rag or your finger and then tip your machine back down again, it won't get on that plate. All right, let's talk about the auto steer. The auto steer is the General Transmission's auto steer system. This one happens to be a DI310 model, and about the biggest difference between it and the one that you see in the Aaron's is this is just a little bit bigger gear ratio. In other words, there's more of a step down gear system, gear on it. Otherwise, internally, it works really well. This one has 1 inch shafts. I don't know. Nice big heavy duty shafts on it. Let's spend a little time to talk about the auto turn, because there's a lot of people out there who think that they don't like the auto turn system. The auto turn itself, this gearbox, this gear case, is just an auto locking differential. So when you're driving, both wheels are powered. When you go to turn, it just automatically releases so that you can make your turn or even zero turn with it. When the machine's not running, you can easily back up and move around. The system doesn't lock up. The biggest thing that I want to make a point of is the gear itself works really well. Right now, the Toro system and the Aaron system there's no problems with them. Originally, when Aaron's first put this auto turn in the deluxe models, they had the weight wrong on the whole system and it was off balance, which caused guys to complain about the thing wanting to steer on its own. But that's not the case anymore. The Toros and the new Aaron's made after 2016, the balance is adjusted right. You don't even know it's there. This thing is like driving a shopping cart. That's how easy it is to maneuver around. Now, what's the difference between the auto turn and the trigger steering ones? Well, first off, the auto turn has about 50 to 75 less parts in the transmission case. The steering ones use 2 sets of gears here and here. The shaft is split, and when you go to release one side, you pull the trigger and it releases this. It's either a planetary or a dog type system. It releases that and allows the wheel to turn. You pull the other side, it does the same thing. So there's quite a bit more pieces and parts in here. Toro's trigger system has been around quite a while, and it's bulletproof. It just really doesn't go bad. I just want to say a little bit more about the automatic steering. Between Toro and Aaron's, there's probably, I would guess 300,000, maybe 400,000 of these units out now and blowing snow and clearing snow. The auto turn is put in small units, as light as small as a 24-inch, and all the way up through a 36-inch snowblower. And there's really no problems with them. So when you read or hear someone on YouTube complain about the system, most of the time they don't have the skid shoes adjusted properly. They have one tire that's flat, or they have an old original 2014 Aaron's. You just don't hear any problems. I had the Aaron's Rapid Track last year, and the thing was just so easy to use without having to deal with triggers and all that other stuff. Your wife or your spouse or anyone else can easily use this snowblower, because it's one less thing that they have to learn is how to use the triggers. So I can't say enough good about this. Not that the other guys don't have their reasons, but it's not a bad system at all. I would really recommend that this will be a good system for you. So, enough said. Alright, one last thing inside the case. The belt down below, that's the belt for the impeller. And on the left-hand side, down here is a brake system, so that when you release it, it stops. They're supposed to stop in about 2 seconds. And if it's adjusted properly, like we talked about, where you got that 1/16 inch gap on the belts, this thing will stop the impeller in about 2 seconds. I do want to show you a little bit how that this friction plate moves up and down to get your traction, just so you can see it. See how that moves up and down? Doesn't have to move very far, just a little bit. So when it's in neutral, this is spinning freely. When you put your hand on the handle and push down on it, this lifts up. Can you see it? This lifts up and meets with that rubber tire. It's a real simple system. We've been using it for 40 years. As long as the manufacturer, and Toro does, as long as the manufacturer gets the composition of this wheel correct, everything works forever, works for a long time before you have to do any maintenance on it. I rarely, no, I have to say, I can't remember when I've heard of anyone having problems with the drive system on these Toros. They're just built well, and they'll last for you. So let's see, we got one more thing to show you how to take a wheel off. Alright, if you ever need to take a wheel off, say you got a flat tire and you want to bring it in, have it replaced or something like that, all you have to do is take and grab this clip and then slide it off. There's a washer, take that washer off, and then just slide the machine out. Now if you notice, I don't know if you can see it there on the video or not, but there's a little keyway. I like to make sure that's up when I take this wheel off, because this key will fall out if you're not paying attention. I've had a few people over the years complain that they took their wheel off, put it back on, and it didn't work after that. Well, that was because this key fell out. So it's not they don't put it in the maintenance, but I would say every 3 or 4 years, if you want to, just take your wheels off and put a little grease on this, so that way if you ever have to have a tire fixed or something like that, that doesn't rust up, and it's easy to take off for you. Alright, that's about it. Is there anything else you want me to go over on the machine? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe. Thank you.
down